today we're going to be talking about the top 5 solos now in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle patch. It just now came out today, and I was meaning to make a video like this. We're going to talk about the top 5 solos with a couple honorable mentions like we always do, and give you guys all the builds. As you guys can see here, the ninjas on the screen. So we're on that patch. Expect a lot of content with all the changes, and of course with the new skins and everything like that. But like always, we're going to jump right into it. Hope you guys enjoy this video and learn something from it. So starting out at number 5, of course. In my opinion, Ganyu is going to be coming into the number 5 spot. He recently got buffed, so his early game is really good, especially in lane. His 3 does a ton of damage. He's a really good nuisance in the mid-game team fights, can hard carry those mid-game team fights. The only thing about him is that he falls off a good bit late game, because if you use your horse aggressively, people are going to be able to shred you down in it and basically just kill you while you're using it. So be careful of that, but that's why you go Thorns on the character. So your actives are going to be Blink and Thorns almost always, but you can mess around with going maybe a Sprint. Sprint's kind of nice on him because it works on your ult. You can mess around with going some other actives. Maybe you need a Beads just because they have so much CC. But the problem is you have a long duration CC immunity, so a lot of times you don't want Beads. Basically, always want to go Blink Thorns so you don't fall off super hard late game. Your build will always be Warrior's Blessing. I personally think Warrior Tabi is the way you go on him because you want your mid game to be really strong. Tank Boots are really good for like the early game and late game, but I think Warrior Tabi will just make you do so much damage in those mid game team fights that you want to carry. That's the play on him. You can go Tank Boots. You could possibly go Teleria Boots just because he has some mana problems, but you won't have to worry because the items you're going to be going next are going to give you all the mana you need. You're going to be going Breastplate into Sledge. Unless you're really worried about their magical damage, say they have a Cthulhu solo, or they have like a magical jungler that you really need to get that defense for right away, then just go straight into the Genjis. But otherwise, you can go Genjis 4th most of the time. And then you're going to be going into Cad Shield. This just rounds out the build so well, especially on this patch. Cad Shield is now in a really good spot where it's going to work on all forms of sustain, not just ability healing. So it's going to work on lifesteal, HP 5, regen for Fire Giant and all that. It's going to be a really good item to pick up in a lot of the time, but it was already a good item for Guan to pick up just because he has so much healing from his 1, and all these items just work so well together, right? You're going to get so much defense from everything. 236 physical, 213 magical, almost 3k health. And you just have a ton of utility. You have full CDR with this build. A lot of damage from, your Warrior Tabi, Sledge, and Cad Shield are all giving you a decent amount of power. This is a very strong build in the mid game, and late game you're going to be feeling good too, as long as you use your Blink Thorns and ult correctly to initiate. Some other items that you can always look to go are Nemean. Nemean's pretty nice on a character like Guan because you'll have the block stacks in your ult. You can also look to mess around with a Shield Rebirth and a Wing Blade on him. Kind of makes him very hard to lock down in those team fights just because he's so fast. And then you can also go something like Relic Dagger to have your actives up more. But yeah, Guan's in a really good spot. He isn't 5th in mine because he does have some downsides. Like, for example, he has some bad matchups in solo. He does fall off a good amount late game compared to some other characters, in my opinion. And, he has long duration channeled abilities that you can kind of punish with certain CCs and certain comps. But yeah, he's in a really good spot. Try and dominate in the mid game, and you're going to be feeling good playing Guan right now with a build like this. Moving on to our number 4 spot, we have Nike, if it'll show up. Nike, here we go. Nike's going to be at number 4. She was really good at last split. She's in a decent spot now. We kind of thought that she would be pretty bad because of the Sunder and Curse Dog changes, but in all honesty, even if people are buying Sunder against you as a soul lane or full tank, it's fine. You can get away from them. You can run away from the person with the Sunder. As long as you get your blink all off onto the back line, jump on them, your job is basically done. It's kind of like how Zhang used to be, where you would blink ult, and even if they all focused you down and used everything on you and tried to kill you, you would have gotten so much damage off and so much initiation basically, that you're always in a good spot. And that's kind of how Nike is now, even if they go Sunder. And a lot of the time they don't go Sunder, which is the funny part. So you basically always go these 2 relics, Blink and Thorns. Now, you can go Beads, but I recommend if you're going to go Beads, then to not go Blink, because you can still initiate with your jump. You can still get in there really quickly. You're going to have some movement speed in your build. You're still going to be able to initiate. I don't really recommend going Blink and Beads because late game, it's going to be hard for you to actually kill anybody with a build like that. You just won't have enough damage, enough yellow damage, if you will. You need that Thorns to really solo their backline late game and buy a lot of time. So either go Blink Thorns or go Beads Thorns. But most of the time, you're going to be able to go with Blink Thorns, and I recommend buying it right away because you can make use of it in the laning phase pretty much immediately to get clear. There's a lot of different options you can go on Nike. You're obviously going to start with the Warrior's Blessing and Blink, and a bunch of pots. By the way, on all these characters, you always go Chalice plus 3 health pots. I should probably go ahead and say that, but this is going to be the same for every character. The only thing, actually, every character is going to have a bit of a different build, which is what I think is really cool. After the Glad Shield changes, all these characters are going to be having different builds. There's a lot of uniqueness, a lot of different gods being played in solo. So honestly, the removal of Glad Shield has been, or at least not the removal, but the rekit of Glad Shield, the change of it, has made soloing pretty amazing, honestly. So many different builds, so many different characters. But so for Nike, you can go 3 different things. You can go Tank Boots, you can go Warrior Tabby, you can go Telerio. I like to go Telerio a lot of the time. The movement speed you get from this, you don't really need the power. You already do enough damage with the Mystical that you're going to go and the Thorns that you have. You're just having that extra movement speed to rotate around and make a lot of impact around the map is really nice. It also works on your Ren, so you actually can hit all of it, the one. But, you know, you can go just straight up Warrior Tabby and feel pretty good about it. Your autos are going to hit pretty hard. And if you're feeling really scared in the early game, you're in a bad matchup, you're going to get camped, maybe you can go Tank Boots and you'll feel fine about that as well, because you'll still be able to clear waves, no problem. So you always go Mystical. Mystical is just so nice on her. You're going to be sticking to people really hard in the mid game and in the laning phase. It increases your damage and your clear a little bit. Just allows you to hyper farm. Nike's really good at farming, especially with an item like Mystical. From here, you can kind of do whatever. I recommend going a health magical item. I don't really like Sledge on Nike. I think there's better items for you to go. Just because you don't really need that physical power from Sledge to actually kill people. So a lot of the time you probably just want to go to Pestilence if they have a decent amount of healing. But if they don't really have any relevant healing, then I actually love Talisman of Energy on her. The MP5, movement speed, attack speed, all of it is really nice on her. And 300 health is the big thing because building health on Nike is really, really good. So I always go Relic Dagger on Nike just because I think it allows you to make some crazy plays in the mid game. You're always going to have your Blink Thorns up, and it's basically right in line with your ultimate because you don't go a lot of CDR on her, so your ult's on like an 80-second cooldown, and that's exactly the same cooldown as your Blink and Thorn. So basically every time your ult is up, boom, you can go make a play. You can mess around from here. You can kind of do a lot of different stuff. Void Shield into Mantle is kind of the standard for me. Void Shield allows you to do a little bit more damage late game and also makes you a good bit tankier, and also helps your jungler kill people when you're diving them. So this would be the standard build. But you can do some other stuff. Basically, go items with health most of the time. The only item that doesn't have health in this build is Mantle, and that kind of, I don't think I need to explain that. Mantle is just a really good item. Gaia is always like an option if you're against a magical and you want to start that and, you know, avoid going mystical first item. Don't really like Sledge on her. I also don't like Bulwark on her just because your shields can be a little bit weird. Shields a lot of times don't stack and they'll remove one from the other. You can go Midgardian if they have like a double ADC comp, but a lot of times they're not going to have that, so you don't really have to worry about it. And definitely do not go Pridwin on a character like Nike. The Pridwin shield does not work. It literally just doesn't appear ever, so do not ever go that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I wouldn't recommend going like Glad Shield or Berserkers. You don't really need those, but this is pretty much the standard build on Nike. Go this in your ranked games, and I promise you'll carry with it as long as you're making plays with your Blink and your Thorns whenever you can. At number 3, we have Sun Wukong. You guys probably guessed that he would be in the top 5. This was from my last video, so let's remove all this because it's a little bit different now. So Wukong is still in a really good spot. Soul Eater is very nice on him. He is very, very hard to bully in the laning phase because his passive is so good, and he can just proc Warrior's Blessing from far away with his 1, which is really nice for him. And he's just kind of a safe character. He has some bad matchups, like he's bad into Arthur. I think he's bad into like Osiris. And in my opinion, he's kind of even bad into Nike, but you're not really playing him for that early game. You're playing him for that mid game where he will be an absolute menace and can just solo backliners with the build that I'm going to show you. So same thing with him. The only thing that's different about him is that you're going to be going Blink Beads most of the time, almost always, just because you're going a bit more damage in the build. A general rule of thumb is the more damage you have, the less likely you want to go Thorns, just because you're not going to stay in the fight. You're not going to want to sit there and tank all the damage for as long, so you're not going to get as much value. But if you go a little bit more tankiness, say you switch 1 or 2 items out in your build to be a little bit more tanky, then you can look to go the Thorns option. But the build is the same every single game, for Wukong at least. At least the first 2 items, you go Boots, Warrior Tab, of course, Boots into Soul Eater. You get so much damage from this. You're going to stack up that Soul Eater pretty quickly. You're a pretty good farmer. You know, Wukong's kind of traditionally been a hyper farmer. Then you're going to go into Sledge. Sledge is just a really good combo with Soul Eater because it gives you extra power, it gives you that CCR and tankiness that you need. It's kind of like one of the tankiest items for how cheap it is. It's not like the tankiest item. It's not like a Thebes or an Urchin, but for how cheap it is and the power spike that you get and everything else you get from it, the CCR, all that, it's a very, very good item in this build. So I like to go Void Shield here. You can also go Glad Shield, kind of whatever you like. Glad Shield's really nice here just because it gives you that CDR and it's going to be really good in the mid game. You just don't have a lot of protections to back it up, but that's fine. The base stats on it are good. And then if they have a magical that you really have to worry about, then you can go into a magical defense item like Oni's. It's going to be a very good like single magical defense item. And then you're going to round out the build with a Heartseeker. Pretty tanky to both sides, but you're also going to do a lot of damage. I wouldn't say tanky, you're just hard to kill because you have a few defensive items and you have a lot of defensive options. And then you want to sell your boots late game for something like Glad Shield, and you'll be feeling pretty good. There's a lot of options on Wukong. You're not going to go all 6 of these items every single game. There's a lot of options, like Brawler is really good on him for a damage item just because he can proc it so well. He can proc it from far away at the start of fights. Erendite's really good on him for chasing people down. You go into your ult, land on somebody, do a ton of damage, chase him down with the movement speed and extra damage that you get. That's really nice on him. And then some defensive options. You know, you can always go something like Mantle or Magi's, since you are a bit more damaging. You don't want to just get one shot whenever your beads are down, or maybe you went Thorns and, you know, you decided to do that. So, yeah, as far as every item after the first 3 items, it's Warrior Tie by Sledge, or Warrior Tie by Soul Eater Sledge. The next 3 items, you can kind of go how you want to. Basically, just build a bit bruiser, a bit more damage, and you're going to be a menace in the mid to late game for sure. Coming in at number 2, we have Cthulhu. He's no longer in the number 1 spot. He's been nerfed a little bit, but he's still such a good character. He's a bully in the laning phase. He's an absolute monster in the late game team fights and the mid game team fights, as long as you know what you're doing and in sequencing your abilities correctly. So build, you can go this build. This is the build from the last video, but oh, I can just click clear. I clicked everything last time. But I actually go a bit of a different build this time. So this time around, the relics actually are going to be blink. Notice that we're not going TP. It allows you to be so useful in the late game because you can blink, initiate, and then have your thorns up or your beads up or whatever else to help you get out. You know, it's a lot better than having TP. The only thing is you still can go TP if you really feel like it on some characters, but I really recommend trying to get used to going blink in another relic just because it allows you to do so much in the mid to late game. It allows you to carry. It allows you to be like a Season 2 warrior or Season 3 soul laner. It's amazing. So definitely recommend that. But on Cthulhu, you most always are going to be going blink thorns. That's just kind of like the necessity on him. I don't really recommend going anything else. Even with all the thorns nerfs, or not the thorns nerfs, but the 1 thorns nerf, you're still going to want to have thorns on the soul laners. So, Warrior Tabi into purple boots, and if you're against a physical, you're going to go straight into that breastplate. CDR is very nice on him, allows you to have your ult up more often, which is really good. Also, just having your standard abilities for trading in lane is really nice. Straight into the Gaia. If you're against a magical, then you're just going to want to go Gaia first into Voidstone into breastplate, but most of the time you're against a physical, so you're just going to be going boots, breastplate, Gaia, Voidstone. And then I actually like to go Magi's here. And the reason for this is, yeah, you don't get use of it out of your ult, but the only issues you ever have on Cthulhu, the only time you're ever going to feel bad is when you can't get your ult off. People are going to be poking you really hard, or they're going to get you too low, or maybe they're just going to burst you down before you can even get your ult. And you don't want to go beads on a character like this, so you want to have a Magi's for that, so it'll proc that, and you'll be able to get into your ult always. It kind of doesn't make sense because I always tell people don't go Magi's or Spirit Robe on characters like Vamana, or characters with just like Ganyu that have really long CC durations, just because it doesn't get a lot of value. But on Cthulhu, I actually think it does, because people try and focus you down before you get into your ult. And if you can just get your ult off in a fight, then I promise you're going to be starting to fight pretty well. So, and then I like to go into Divine. So you're not the tankiest you'll ever be with this build, but you do have a lot of health, which is really good for your ultimate. You're at 3250, which is exactly what you want, more than 3k health. When you go into your ult, you're going to have so much. But also, you don't really want to be that tanky in your ult. And what I mean by that is late game, it doesn't matter if you have 400 prots, you have a million gajillion prots, you're going to get bursted down if they have their kin size and their prot online, right? So you actually want to be a little bit more threatening, and that's why you go Divine. You go Divine plus Thorns. The flat pen you get from Divine is going to make your Thorns do more damage. It's also going to make it so that they aren't just sitting there life-stealing off of you. That's a problem that Cthulhu's have, is that they're sitting there trying to hit the enemy backline, but turns out their ADC is just whacking you with autos, and he's just life-stealing through all your damage. Well, the flat pen and power you get from Divine, plus all the other damage you have in your build, plus your base damage and the Thorns and everything, it's just going to allow you to dive better than it would be if you just had pure tank items, at least in my opinion. And I've played a lot of Cthulhu. I do really well with him in the SPL, so maybe my opinion should be valued. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know why I said that, but but trust me, this is, I think, the go-to, and it just allows you to be a bit more threatening than a stupid like full tank Cthulhu who's just running at you, and it turns out it's just basically like another fire giant that you just have to sit there and auto for a while, you know. So be a little bit more threatening with your build. If you don't want to go into that Divine route, feel like you're just getting bursted down too quick and you don't really feel like you know how to get your damage off or something, you can always go something like Mantle that'll proc in your ult and help you get out. You can mess around with the build where you go like Chronos Pendant. You go like Tank Boots into Chronos Pendant. That's always fun. It's a fun build on Guardians that you can try out, but I promise you this is the go-to build. And Mid Guardian's also something nice because, you know, you get 300 health from this, plus if people are going to be autoing you down in your ult, it's going to be really hard to kill you if they're getting their attack speed slowed and they're getting slowed while also trying to kill a character that has like 2 times the amount of health pool of any other character in the game besides maybe like Nike. So yeah, Mid-Guardian's always an option on him as well. And yeah, Cthulhu, even though he's been nerfed, he's still amazing in ranked. One of the best characters to just win lane and carry in the mid to late game. So that's why he's at number 2. But once you see number 1, maybe you'll understand why Cthulhu's not there. And of course, we're going to do honorable mentions before we get to our number 1 spot. Coming in the honorable mentions, we have Cerberus. Cerberus is a very good character in the early to mid game. Late game, not so much, but you can make use with it by going Blink Thorns. You can always dive with those 2 relics. If they have a lot of CC for you, then you could go for a beads and just try and use your raw base damage and prot shred and stuff to kill people. But I do recommend going Thorns most of the time on him, especially on him because Thorns get so much value, because Thorns is really good on magical characters because they can go magical pen and Thorns does magical damage, so it'll just increase your Thorns damage. Plus Cerberus has prot shred on his too, so he's basically doing true damage with his abilities plus his Thorns. But since he's honorable mention, we're not going to talk too much about him. Pretty standard build on him, honestly. You just go into you go Boots Breastplate. You go a little bit different on him because you just kind of want to be doing a lot of damage. Binding is really nice because it combines with your Thorns to do a ton of damage. And you kind of just go the standard Ethereal into, Mantle. You can, if you're really feeling it, instead of going Binding or Voidstone there, go Spear the Magus. It does so much damage with him. 110 power, 10 flat pen, and then the passive is just going to make you one-shot people. And it also increases your Thorns damage. So all of this kind of is a pretty synergistic build. You're going to be pretty tanky with this build, but you're really just wanting to try and blink on their backline Thorns and just go all in and just do so much base damage with your 2 and your 1 plus your prot shred. You'll pop off for sure. You can go something like Gaia if you want to go that in the laning phase because they have knockups. It'll keep you really healthy. And you don't have to go Voidstone. I just think Voidstone's a really good item on your Guardians. It's going to allow you to do damage to everybody, not just their backliners, but even to their frontliners, give you some prot shred. And then you can also always go to an item like Magi's to make sure that you can get your abilities off. Maybe you don't want to go beads, but they still have some CC. Magi's is going to help with that just because Cerberus is pretty easy to lock down in the mid to late game. That's one of his flaws, is that he's pretty easy to kill just because he has some long duration abilities. Like it takes a while for him to get out. Kind of slow, just pretty big fat character that you can lock down, so keep that in mind. Honorable mention, Cerberus. The other honorable mention is going to be Sett. The reason I don't have Sett in my top 5 is that I think he's kind of hard to play for a lot of people. Not that I don't think he's a hard character, but at least in solo he's a little bit harder, I think, to get a ton of value in the late game. Some people feel like they just get bursted down and stuff. And it's true, but the reason I think he's really good is that you can go Beads, Thorns on this character. You do not need Blink, and Beads is really, really nice to have. Because you basically can't be like they can't lock you down, and you can just keep chasing forever. You have movement speed and your ult. You have slow moving on your 3. If you ever get CC, boom, bees, Thorns, walk at them. And it's even better this patch because you can no longer Thorns when you're CC'd, as in you can't pop your Thorns when you're CC'd. If somebody CCs you while your Thorns is already out, then it's fine. But that's really nice for Sett because he already wanted to go Beads Thorns anyway, right? He has no CC immunity in his kit besides like a slow immunity. So I basically go the same build every game on Cthulhu. The only difference is if you're against a physical or a magical. So if you're against a physical, you're going to go Warrior Tabi into Berserkers, into Frostbound, and I'll show you the rest of the build after I explain what you do to a magical. So with a magical, the only difference is you don't go Berserkers first, and you switch to Ninja Tabi. And the reason for this is that you don't get any attack speed from any of the other items that you go. You don't get it from any other item that you go. So I actually really like Ninja Tabi because it's a little bit of a cozy item in the early game when you're going to go Frostbound as well. You want a little bit more attack speed with Frostbound so that you can consistently keep them right in front of you. So it's really nice. So if you're against a magical, I go Ninja Tabi, Frostbound, Sledge. This is really good into Cthulhu. It allows you to run him down super hard, and you basically can just all in him whenever you want with your Frostbound and your ultimate. And then you go into Cat Shield, into Mantle. Mantle's a very nice item on the set to have. You're going to be pretty tanky with this build, honestly, but you're still going to do a lot of damage. And keep in mind, Cat Shield is in a very good spot now. And then you can kind of go whatever you need last time and whatever you want. You can go with a Toxic Blade if you're feeling that. You can go with another like pure tank item if you need that. Or a lot of times you can go something like Glad Shield in the late game once you have a decent amount of defense online. That will help you do extra damage from the passive. But a lot of times I just go Toxic Blade so I can 1v1 their ADC. you know, giving that anti-heal from that, it's going to be really nice. Plus the Frostbound. Late game, you want to sell your Frostbound for something like whatever you need. A lot of times I can go something like Bulwark of Hope, especially if they have a lot of magical damage. It's going to allow Sett to just all in and survive just a little bit longer, get more healing off. And then you can always sell your boots for something like Void Shield as well, just kind of keep your damage up. This is a pretty good build in the late game. You can always go Void Shield last if you need that as well. But yeah, a lot of different options on him. But again, the only difference in the builds would have been that I would have gone Warrior Tabi into Berserkers, into Frostbound, and then the same from there. So Sledge is next, into Cad Shield, into Mantle. It kind of rounds out the build really well, and you're going to be very strong at this point in the game. And you know how you play Sett. You jump on them, you ult, make sure you have your 3 proc, you ult, and you beat Thorns if they try and go on you, and boom, you're gonna be popping off and carrying. But that's Sett at the honorable mention. And coming in at number 1, you might have guessed it. I always say that when I do these videos, like, oh, you might have guessed it. It's like, well, why are you guessing? Well, you're probably guessing. You're probably just wondering, or well, what's your top 5? I don't know. But my top 5 is this: King Arthur at number 1. King Arthur is just still a ridiculous god. His ult does way too much damage. His ult's always up. He always has a jab or his charged ult. He is so safe in the laning phase with the build. He doesn't really have any bad matchups. Maybe he has to play back the first 5 levels against some gods, but it doesn't matter. Once you get your boots online, once you hit level 5 and you have your ultimates coming up, you are so strong. You're a menace in the early game. You're a menace in the mid game. It's hard to fight around an Arthur at blue buffs just because he has so many abilities there, and it's so hard to kill and lock down because of the CCR and the Gaia that he goes. But what's crazy about Arthur is that he's good in team fights. If you know how to play him, he's probably the best character in the game in team fights. And I just mean, like, out of everyone. I don't mean, like, he's the best solo laner in the game. I mean, like, he's an amazing team fighter if you know what you're doing. So the thing about Arthur is that you're also kind of going either Blink Beads or Blink Thorns. I recommend going Blink Beads a lot of the time. You do not need Thorns on him to actually kill people. He has so much damage that it's not necessary. He's also very hard to kill, so he actually can get more damage off than other characters. But if they actually have nothing for you to bead, say that they're just playing a full slow comp or they're playing characters that don't really lock you down that well, then Blink Thorns is still good. Like, just because you don't need it doesn't mean that it's bad to always go, or it's bad to sometimes go. You just really want that beads when they have that CC heavy comp, because, you know, people are going to be trying to interrupt you on cooldown, try and peel you, and Arthur is very hard to peel when he has full CCR plus beads. So the build is just going to be a little bit different from last time. Oh, I forgot. Let me go our Warrior Tabi real quick. Or Warrior's Blessing. So Tank Boots is always the play on Arthur, in my opinion. You can go Warrior Tabi, but you don't need it. You do not need... That's the crazy thing about Arthur, is that you don't need power in your build to even do damage. You do so much damage just from all your abilities and your base damage and everything. So you basically go this every single game. It's Boots into Gaia. That's your first 2 items. Pretty much every single time. Can't go wrong with it. If you're against a physical, I actually like going Glad Shield. Now, Glad Shield doesn't get a ton of value in the early game on most characters, but the thing is, you have Warrior Tabi, or Warrior's Blessing, which is giving you 25 of each prot once it's fully stacked. Then you have Tank Boots, which is also giving you some prots to help with your Glad Shield. And you're really just buying the Glad Shield for the stats and then the transition into the mid game to late game, right? So 25, 40 prot, 200 health, 10 CDR, like, that's really good on Arthur, especially the 10 CDR in the mid game. It's going to allow you to do so much damage in these team fights. And it combines really well with Genji's, which I like to go now with Glad Shield, just because the more abilities you're getting off, the more Glad Shield procs you're getting off, which is really, really nice. And you're kind of going like an ability-based build with this build, especially if you go into Void Shield 5th into Pridwin. So now you're going to be sitting at full CDR with Glad Shield procs procking on cooldown. You're going to be so tanky. Glad Shield plus Void Shield is such a good combo. You do so much damage with these 2 items on Arthur. And then, of course, late game, you're going to round out the build with Mantle. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is that you aren't max CCR with this build. You literally have no CCR in this build. So if you're worried about that, they do have a lot of CC that you want to you know, kind of counter, and go into Onis. And then, of course, when you have your Tank Boots plus Onis, you're going to be sitting at max CCR. So that's really nice. But it's okay to sell 20% CCR for Mantle, in my opinion. And then you're going to be feeling really, really good even with this build. But you can switch it out for Genji's and kind of go both. And you go this build basically every single game. There's not really anything that you need to switch up or get too crazy with. Just kind of go this build. Again, Tank Boots, go this exact build, and you're going to be feeling really good in those mid to late game team fights. You're going to be feeling unstoppable. And basically just kind of decide whether or not to go Blink Beads or Blink Thorns. A lot of times just go Blink Beads, but if they don't have any CC, just go Blink Thorns, then you'll dive that backline even harder. But yeah, Arthur, number 1. He's just good at all stages of the game. Very, very hard to punish. Doesn't really have any bad matchups, and that's why I personally think he's number 1. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is that some people say that he's not a great character because you don't know how to play him. Well, I have a million videos on my YouTube, a million demonstrations or guides to show you exactly how to play with him. Just copy that, and I promise you, you're going to be climbing ranked in no time from the solo lane with a character like King Arthur. And that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this top 5 solo lane video with the builds. Hopefully you learned something from it. Like I said, pretty much every character. If you just build what I'm building and, try and learn a little bit of how to play them in the current meta by watching videos or watching streamers or just, maybe learning a little bit on your own, then I promise you, you're going to be feeling pretty good. These characters are top 5 for a reason, and they're in a really good spot. And yeah. That's pretty much all I got for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and healthy as always. Check out these, look at these turtles. I like turtles. But yeah.
I like turtles.
Look at these skins. Go buy these skins. They're cool. All right. Bye, guys.